Welcome to our constituent meeting that we do once a month during the legislative session for Edye and I to talk about what we do in our respective committees. That's how we start these meetings. I don't know that all of you have been here at least once. I see a couple new faces, but we'll do that, and then we sort of open it. We open it up for questions, comments, whatever it is you'd like to ask us or share with us or share with the group here. And we'll go from there. We're here for an hour. It is a little warm in here. I might have to take my jacket off here tonight, but anyway. You want me to go first? You want to go first?
I would like you to go first.
You'd like me to go first? Okay. I've been in the State House for 9 years. This is my 9th year. And this has been on 2 standing committees. One was the Environmental Committee for 4 years, and then the last 5 years has been Appropriations, House Appropriations. And where we are as a committee right now is we passed a budget out of our committee over a month ago, and the Senate's actually taking it up tomorrow on the floor. So they're done with their process and have it on the floor. And then once we get through that, by the end of the week, then there'll be differences between the House and the Senate. But I've got a preview on that, and I don't think they're tremendous. I think they're easy to probably reconcile. And there'll be a committee of conference where there's 3 House members and 3 senators that get together in a room and reconcile those differences. And then it'll come to the floor, and when it's on the floor, whether it's a House or a Senate, you can't make amendments to it. You can either say yes to it or no to it. So there's no changing it at that point in juncture. But I don't see any major issues this year. I think there's been a real effort for all parties to come together and to compromise. I know that I compromised in some of the things I was wanting to do. For instance, in our committee, and it's true on the Senate side, we all have our budget portfolios within that committee. So I handle all the criminal justice elements in the state of Vermont. I also handle all the environmental elements. So, but that's my perspective and what I bring to that conversation. Typically, getting the budget passed is usually the last thing that happens in the session, and then we all go home. But the call it the elephant in the room, call it whatever you want to call it, which is the ed governance, education, both governance and financing. It's going to take a little while longer. Senate has it from the House now, and they're trying to work through their process, and then there'll be some getting together and work that through. I suspect we might be there till the end of May. There's some possibility, I guess we could go into June, which is unusual because we're usually done about the middle of May. So we'll see where that goes. So the budget will be done, but we may not have the vote on the floor because that's usually the last thing that's voted on, waiting for the education piece to get worked out. The other issue, big issue that we're working with in our committee is what's happening at the federal level with federal funding. And we heard this as we had departments and agencies coming in to talk to us about their budget requests and those types of things. We've now gone back through all those departments and agencies and also significant nonprofits and say, come back in and talk to us about just your federal funding. What percentage does it make up of your budgets? What are the different things that you do have? What are the different grants? Are some of them formula? In other words, they just sort of fall into place, or some of them competitive grants? And what are you hearing from your federal counterparts in terms of whether something's going to be renewed, or things been pulled back? So we're trying to get a sense of what that is. The challenge, I think, for everyone, including us, is that a lot of those shoes have not dropped yet. We just don't really know. It's really best guess, which makes it difficult for someone like our committee to do scenario planning around this, because you just don't know what's out there or what it could be. So that's the process we're going through right now. The other part of that is building into our budget the ability of both the Joint Fiscal Committee, which can take action outside of a legislative session, and or bring the legislature back into session if certain things happen in terms of funding. We already have in statute mechanisms around the general fund, but the general fund is only about $2 million of a $9 million budget. Federal funds make up at least that, if not more. So, but we have no mechanism if federal funds go away, particularly when we're out of session. So we drafted language which will go into budget. So if it's up to 1% of a department's budget is affected, then this is the action. If it's between 1% and 4%, this is the action. And if it goes over 4%, then the legislature will come back into session and have to deal with that. And probably what that would mean, if that's the case, is we'd write a whole new budget. So that's sort of the place we find ourselves in right now.
Sounds like a long summer.
It might be. Anyway, so I've talked longer than I normally do,
That's okay.
but that's where we are, and those are
And you
things
didn't
that-
even talk about the clawbacks of the funding that's already been given to different,
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of that, but there has been some of that, yeah.
so.
You're up.
Edye Graning, hi. I am in my third year in the State House. I serve on the Commerce and Economic Development Committee as the vice chair of the committee. We have been working on tax increment financing and setting up a new program for smaller tax increment financing districts, and we voted it out of committee today, and so that's why I was just coming in at the last minute. And it's going to be part of the Housing Bill S-127. So it came to us from the Senate. The House is working on all their different pieces. Housing in general is going to take responsibility for it, but there are at least 3 other committees in the House that have different pieces that are working on that. And we're looking at ways to finance housing infrastructure in smaller towns in the state. So right now, the only increment financing that we have really only works for giant districts, for big cities. And this would allow smaller towns, perhaps Jericho and Underhill could take advantage of it if they wanted to build some kind of infrastructure for housing. But it should be available for, if assuming it passes all of the different steps, it will be available for folks. So that's what we've been working on most recently. I don't know.
I don't know what increment.
Oh, tax increment financing.
Yeah.
Yep. So what it does is it takes it. It lets you bond. So it lets this one actually would let a developer or a municipality. So the current version that we have only lets the municipality bond against the future growth of the value of the housing that will be developed. So what it does is money that, if, for example, we lived in a time where we had developers building housing all over the place, which we don't have, all of the money from the taxes would go directly back to the municipality or into the education fund. But what we're finding is the costs right now are so high, and there isn't the infrastructure which adds to the costs, right? We don't have water everywhere. We don't have, sewer or community septic. We don't have, the basics, roads and things like that. So this would allow either a town or a developer to borrow against that future growth of the grand list, so of what the housing value would be, and so they could get a bond and pay it back over time with that future value to actually build the very expensive infrastructure.
Yeah, one of the things, if I may,
Oh, yeah.
is trying to provide opportunities for housing to be built, right? And one of the places to look is the smaller communities that do not have infrastructure. So we've changed some of the rules around developing housing to make it easier for municipalities, but they still have to have that infrastructure. So it's a way for them to raise the money to make that happen. On a really big scale, in terms of thinking about what a TIF is, think about downtown Winooski. Before they developed all of that, a lot of that was based on that particular setup in that area. Now, one of the frustrations I think we're having as legislators is that we've putting these kinds of things in place, but then a given small town has a bond to do the infrastructure, and then they vote it down. So we provide the opportunity for them to do that and create that, and then they choose not to. But that is their choice, so.
There's front row seating over here and window seating over there, so.
So if the town would wish to utilize that bond money, does it require them finding a developer, or does the developer come and negotiate with the town?
Yeah.
To suggest that they would like to do a development, and therefore the town should utilize or request?
Yeah, so this
This
new
funding?
program that, again, hasn't passed yet, it's not law, but the program that we're working on requires a town to have an agreement with a developer and that agreement to decide who's going to do the work, who's going to take out the bond, what the work scope is going to be, and all of that has to be decided in advance. So it's not just money for infrastructure, it's money for infrastructure with the plan to build the housing. It's all together.
Was it
But the money isn't for the housing, the money is only for the infrastructure.
Is it the developer who's suggested that they would like to have this sort of program, or is this just something that?
Yeah, it has come from people who have been, who have not been able to use the current program because it's just too big and broad and unwieldy and requires a lot of development in order to make it work. So the current tax increment financing in the state. And understanding that across the nation, tax increment financing is one of the ways that is most often used for development in towns. And so it's from the people who do the work in Vermont and understand what's happening across the nation.
Yeah, I think one of the other incentives for developers is that part and parcel of this process here is relaxing some of the regulations. So if regulations already exist in a particular village or a town, and you have Act 250 over here, if it's duplicative, then you don't have to go through both processes. Now, I'm oversimplifying that, but that is part of this conversation. So that's the incentive for developers also, not having to go through that extra process.
And the work on Act 250 is sort of been.
Yeah,
Why did this pass?
Well,
some
that
of
was last
some of those
year.
changes have already gone into
Yeah.
effect. Although some of the tier stuff is
Right.
not into effect
Right,
yet.
so we passed a bill last year to make the development more streamlined, right? So if you pass the requirements, you don't have to pass the same requirements multiple different times. But the mapping and all of that is still being developed, and it doesn't truly go into effect until like January 2027. So this is for the mapping pieces. But this CHIP, this Community Housing Infrastructure Program, which is this bill that we're looking at passing, would go into effect sooner. And there are ways that even if the maps haven't been drawn yet, certain areas can use it. So,
Bill did have his hand up, so.
Thank you. Does the town vote on the bond?
it depends. If the developer is taking out the bond, then nobody has to vote on it. If the town is taking out the bond, then the town has to vote on it.
Because the town would be responsible.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Otherwise, the developer takes it out and the developer.
right.
Quick question, maybe it's an aside. Does the revamping of how the environmental court is structured go lockstep with this bill, or are they separate entities?
That's part of the bill that we passed last year, yeah.
Okay, so that's already,
It's going into place.
Yeah, and they're restructuring the Natural Resources Board, which is the Act 250 Board. It's now called the Land Use Review Board.
Okay.
And they're going through some changes, and they're professionalizing the board and stuff like that, so. Mike?
I'm a little bit out of my depth here, but I'm wondering, does the TIF give access to the state bond bank and the state bonding authority at the same time? Oh,
Yes.
cool, that could be very helpful, I think. Yeah.
The CHIP, right? CHIP is the new one.
Great,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Other
So-
questions?
I guess
Yes.
the elephant in the room in a way is, will this affect at all development in the area that we have adjacent to, right over here where the old wood processing mill was?
So no development happens without the municipality. None, I'm sorry, no funds can be accessed through this program without the municipality saying that they want this development to happen, right? So part of this, so the answer is maybe, right? So there's, I mean, there are lots and lots of steps that it could. But yeah, there has to be a partnership with a developer and a municipality and a plan and, yeah.
So this program is designed for smaller towns. What are your thoughts about how smaller towns go about getting more housing, especially affordable, in place? Infrastructure for large homes, long driveways, big lots. I don't think that's where we need our attention or
Subsidies.
municipal money to be going. But in travel corridors, smaller lots, smaller homes, how does this program fit in with what we need in Underhome Jericho for affordable housing?
Yep, that's a great question, and we've been debating that for weeks, and trying to figure out where to put the guardrails in to ensure that the kind of housing that we want developed is developed. So primary residencies is, right, we don't want secondary residences, we want primary residences for people so that that we can all afford, right? Again, not dispersed, but compact development. And so, so there's a parcel, right, that has to be developed on a parcel. So it's more compact that way. There's a lot of language around primary housing, and we just finalized some of that today in the agreement and in the approval from the Vermont Economic Progress Council, that's FEPC. So there's a lot of different steps to make that happen. We didn't, and there are lots of levels of approval to make it happen. So I don't know how it will end up, right? Because we don't know how many towns will want this. We don't know how many towns are even ready to do this, right? Because a lot of people want more housing, but a lot of towns aren't ready to make all of the things happen to me. So there are a lot of steps, but there are some good guardrails, and I'm hoping that they stand up. And we don't have to talk about only this. We can answer any questions you have about anything. We'll do our best, and if we don't have the answer, we'll get the answer for you.
So I have a question. Has there been any discussion about programs for the seniors? I was talking to someone who's one of the executives with Agewell just within the last week, and their staff isn't being cut, but their programs are being cut like just randomly, with no notice, no planning process. And I know that's coming from up above, but what can we do to protect our seniors and make sure those programs that help them stay in their homes and living well are in place?
I guess I'd have to understand where those cuts are coming from, if that's organizational, or whether that's due to state funding, or whether it's due to other funding that it might be flowing
It sounds
through.
like it might be federal funds that
Yeah.
has been
You know, and I'm not specifically aware of what funding is funding that right now, and whether they're just anticipating something happening. I haven't heard anything specifically in that arena being cut at this point in time, but it doesn't mean that that didn't happen, okay? Because it's hard for us to sort of follow all those.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot going on.
So there certainly have been areas where funding has been cut. Funding's gone away. And it hasn't been significant, but it's certainly significant for the organizations that got hit by it, right? I mean, when some of these organizations and or departments and agencies come in, it's I get someone that comes in, I'm trying to think of who it is now, that has like 2% federal funding, right? So they're not really at risk a lot, okay? Department of Labor is 100% federally funded. think about Medicaid and all the services and all the folks that it touches in the state of Vermont. That's over $1 billion. And we do not have the resources to backfill some significant reduction of Medicaid. If we lose $10 million here and $5 million here, we can adjust to that. I'm sure there are ways we can adjust to that. People will still hurt from that, but some of it can be very devastating. Agency of Natural Resources, particularly in Department of Environmental Conservation, federal funding is about $130 million at FY26. That's a lot of money. So, anyway.
Yeah, so as much specific information as you have, if it's a question like that, let us know and we can
Yeah.
dig in and find out. But in general, right now we're gathering information and we're trying to understand, are there things that we can backfill or not? And
Yeah, and my colleagues, particularly on my committee on appropriations, like I said before, we each have responsibility for budget areas. So if you were to send me something, I could then forward it on to that person and say, could you get back to, about this?
Thank you so much.
I think about seniors and, out in the hinterlands and, what's happening with Meals on Wheels. I always thought of, that's like bedrock, but now I understand it's at risk.
Yeah.
Is it cut or?
I haven't heard that it's cut, but I understand it's been identified as something at risk, yes. Maybe not 100%, but maybe it doesn't always, it's not like yes or no, it could be somewhere in between, right? Elements of a program, that kind of thing.
So as a state, how do we figure out what programs we can postpone maybe for 2 or 3 years? And which ones are essential? Maybe, money has to be pulled from important things but postponable to take care of basic human services.
Yeah, you raise a very good point, and this is a conversation we've had on my committee, that before we get to this place where we have to make some difficult decisions, it would probably be, and we will be having that conversation to sort of look at, when we say we want to preserve core programs and activities, well, what are they, right? And we need to develop that roadmap, if you will, before we get there, because I think it won't make the decision making easier, but I think won't be arbitrary, right? The humanities lost their whole federal funding about a month ago. And I understand today that the Mellon Corporation and their foundation is now backfilling a lot of states' humanities programs. 100% of federal funding went away. Now, when we're sitting in our committee and we're saying, we all support the humanities, we all think that's important, at least I think we all think that, right? But is that more important than supporting home and community-based services for seniors at home, so we don't have to go to a nursing home?
Right.
What's more important?
or keeping people's heat on, right?
So,
Like, we have to.
But those are going to be the challenges, unfortunately, I think, as we go down the road. Anyway, yeah. Yes, Susan?
So I just heard about H310, which will expand the definition of harassment to include ethnic harassment and anti-Semitic harassment, and it is aimed at, I guess, school training of staff and monitoring maybe behaviors in the classroom and so on. My concern is that it may negatively and unlawfully impact free speech. And I think it's obviously very important to protect and prevent anti-Semitism, but likewise, it's important to protect and prevent other forms of harassment. It's such a highly charged area. And I'm afraid that this proposed legislation, particularly because it says there's going to be an alliance, or the Secretary of Education will work with the Shalom Alliance of Vermont. I don't really know anything about them. I just looked it up online. It sounded like it was somewhat slanted in its viewpoint. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention and suggest that we don't want to facilitate the suppression of properly stated views. I mean, I don't want people to be slurring other groups, my group as well as anybody's group. But it's a bit of a slippery slope.
We want to be able to critique Israel's behavior in Gaza without being called anti-Semitic or racist. I think that's the bottom line. We have opinions. We support Israel, but not like that.
So I don't know if this bill is in House General or House Education. I don't even know if they've taken any testimony on it. I am very aware of the bill. So.
Yeah, and just a broader, it's not specific to this. When we talk about bills, and I know individually you get excited or you might get really interested in something, we have over 1,000 bills between the House and the Senate. And most of them don't really go anywhere. And if they do, they may not look anything like they did when they started. And Susan, you know this.
Yeah, no, I do.
and so, but I don't know where that is. And to Edie's point, I don't know if there's any action been taken or any testimony.
Was it H310?
Yes.
So it was on February 21st, it was read for the first time and referred to the Committee on Education in the House, and that's the last recorded action.
Well, the fact that it went to education, given what's on their plate right now, they're probably not taking up anything else. So that might be an answer to, at least a partial answer.
Yeah, and I'm just,
Doesn't change the issue. I get
right, I think someone brought it to my attention, I'm talking about it, I think it's worth being aware of.
And careful.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I understand that we're in a tough position with the federal appropriations the way they are, and all of the federal cuts and concerning things, I mean, from food safety inspections to public health problems. I just want to emphasize that Vermont's not the only state that is going to have problems. Arkansas just had some big tornadoes and flooding, and Trump turned them down for FEMA help. So if a big red state can get turned down, anybody can and will. So I just encourage you to look at what other states are thinking. You know, perhaps there's a way we can get together and try to attack this from a creative angle. And, you know, more heads are better than one or two. So
I think most of the collaboration that's occurring right now is on the legal front with attorney generals of the various states getting together.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's conversations like we have a joint fiscal office that supports our appropriations and Ways and Means committees and things like that. And I'm sure they have their connections with other states. As far as states getting together, there's some limits to that, right? Because we all have our own budgetary process and how we do things. But certainly at the legal level and probably at some fiscal level, you know, those offices are talking to each other, and they've had those relationships for a long time.
some states may have some creative ideas.
Oh, absolutely.
Of course, Vermont doesn't have a lot to offer, but but maybe we do. Maybe we have more than we think. We've got some very brilliant people in Vermont, so we could offer them.
I hear you. Other folks?
Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Yeah.
This is, everybody's like talking about lots of national broad issues, which is wonderful, but I'm here for a very specific local reason. And Edye, I know that you've made some headway in this, so I'm trying to figure out how we can extend the speed limit in front of Jericho Elementary School to 25 miles per hour, not when the lights are flashing, because right now it's 35, and when the lights flash, it's 20. Drivers are supposed to slow down to 25. But when the lights are not flashing, people are still speeding through there above 35. Just recently, a driver was caught passing in front of Palmer Maple. It's hard to tell in the video, but it's on the local Facebook group. And I have actually called state police several times, seen drivers do absolutely ridiculous things right in front of our elementary school. And I know that you were able to get it from 25 right as you're going past the JCAD after that young girl was killed. But then it goes back up to 35 as soon as you pass where the Jericho Ale and Bean is. Shortly after that, it goes back to 35 and then continues on as 35 unless the lights are flashing. But a lot of times drivers are not paying attention to those flashing lights. And right now the flashing lights aren't even working. And they're not working in front of the high school and they're not working in front of the elementary school. So I just want to know, like, I know that's state highway right there,
Yeah.
but how were you able to get them to change it to 25 in front of the JCAT? Like, I want to get that extended because it's dangerous. Someone's going to get killed.
Yeah, so I wasn't part of the group that did that.
Oh, I thought somebody
So,
told me you were.
yeah, so I appreciate that somebody thinks that I have that much, but
well,
that
anyway,
wasn't.
you know,
But-
you know.
But we can talk to the people in transportation.
I don't have an answer, but we
Yeah,
can,
we can
we
find
we can
out.
figure out what the process is.
Yes.
You're right that it's a state highway.
Yep.
So AOT would absolutely be involved in that.
Yeah.
And the municipality would have to be involved. And it could be a logical extension of the 25 mile an hour zone that's there now, right? But I don't know how you get there.
Yeah, and that's what I've been like trying to get to the bottom of. We were able to change this after there was an unfortunate accident there. So what can we do to extend that so that we don't have any more accidents? Because there are quite a few new families that have moved in that are within walking distance and walk to school every morning, and drivers are not paying attention. They're speeding to get to, I don't know what they're doing, but they're not paying attention, I know that much.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Can you see me afterwards and give me your email?
Yes.
Or-
About to
or-
say that.
Yeah, and we'll figure something out. Or at least find out what the process is.
If the
Yes.
lights are not working and the signage isn't working, perhaps you can mention that to the state as well. If that's a state highway, I would think the state's responsible for maintaining the
Well, there's no question about that, but
Yeah.
why aren't town officials doing that?
So I did call the school district and haven't gotten an answer
Yeah,
as
but
to
it's-
why the
Yeah.
lights are, they're not flashing in front of the high school either.
So it's town of Jericho, not the school district.
So they said they called over to the town and they're trying to get it fixed, but they're still not working.
Okay.
And that was before break.
We do a little follow-up, okay.
Sometimes we can make things happen.
Sometimes.
But thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Can I throw another horseshoe into the traffic calming
Sure.
pit? So we lost our champion in the Senate when Dick Mazza passed away, but he had been instrumental in continuing the effort to outlaw thrush mufflers and aftermarket type additions to vehicles. So Brown's Trace Road has turned into a speedway basically, especially around our house because it's a straightaway. And I think the combination of the noise and the power trip that a loud exhaust promotes in certain drivers, there's excessive speeds going down Brown's Trace. We haven't had any accidents this year, but 2 years ago there were 6. And I don't know if there's a counterpart in the House for what Senator Mazza was working on at the time when he passed.
Yeah, I don't know that. There's been a change in leadership in the House side in terms of who the chair is, and of course, the new chair in the Senate now. Senator Westman is the chair there,
Okay.
and
Yeah, I put a bill in.
who's, yeah, go ahead.
Matt Walker, is that what you're thinking?
What?
No, I put a bill in.
Walter or something, right?
Matt, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can read, I can talk to folks in the Transportation Committee, but I put a bill in against rolling coal early in the session.
We've had our coal rolled multiple times.
And
It's unnerving.
it's when you modify your vehicle so that it can make a black smoke on
Yeah, we saw
command.
that.
So it's technically illegal in Vermont, but it's not explicitly illegal in Vermont. But it's very hard to hold people accountable for. So, it's one of those things where we might be able to do some technicalities. But speed limit enforcement, I think, is mostly the town, and it's mostly the town choosing to have more enforcement or modify the roads, right? So that, that we've tried different, tried different, like line painting, the painting bigger shoulders, different things like that. Except for Route 15, which is not a town road. So,
We gotta go.
enjoy your meeting.
Good luck with that.
Pat?
I'm sure you are aware that Burlington approved the charter change to make possession of firearms in an establishment that serves alcohol illegal, and that was introduced to the Senate. It passed out of committee, and the full Senate passed it last Friday. I've been watching to see, I haven't seen it on the House calendar yet. I have heard, not from any official, but I have heard that will go to the Government Operations Committee in the House when it's introduced, because it's a town charter change as opposed to it's not technically a gun bill. And that's where, in the Senate, it was heard in the Government Operations Committee. Although they had ledge counsel from the judiciary come in there and talk about it a lot. So I guess I'm just asking or wondering if you know anything about when you think it will be introduced into the House and get assigned to committee for action.
When did
Soon?
when did it come to the House? When did it pass House Senate?
Friday.
Then it should have.
Should have been
It should have been.
today.
It should have been probably today.
Yeah, it should have been assigned, it'll be today or tomorrow that it gets assigned to
It's not on
committee.
tomorrow's calendar. It wasn't on today's calendar.
It was on today's calendar.
Was it? Did they put it on?
No,
late?
I'm saying, I didn't
No,
hear. Okay.
it was not, but they change these things,
Yeah.
and they don't always.
Well, you know what, there was a token session yesterday.
Right, so could it have been
So
on
they might have
yesterday's?
advanced
There was a
bills.
There was a Monday session.
It's not, when I look at the bill, the last action on the bill was passage out of the Senate on Friday.
Okay,
So it's not showing up there yet, and I have checked the House calendar every day. I checked it over the weekend, I checked it yesterday, I just now checked it, and I have not seen it.
it should be soon, because I'm already hearing about it. So,
Did they do a vote count on that? I thought they did, didn't it? Yeah.
Is your interest in supporting what Burlington wants
Yes,
to do?
absolutely.
And is that something Underhill and Jericho might want to?
No, this is
It's a town
particular
charter.
bill is a town charter change that Burlington voted 86.6% in support of changing their charter to make the possession of firearms in an establishment with an alcohol license illegal.
I understand so much.
But the legislature makes a decision whether to allow that charter.
Every town charter change has to be approved by the legislature in Vermont. And
I
this Senate
understand.
131 is the introduction of that Burlington town charter change so that the legislature can vote on it and hopefully approve it so that Burlington can implement that change.
So you're interested in supporting gun safety and sensible
Yeah.
gun control?
Yeah. I'm certainly interested in making the possession of firearms in an establishment that serves alcohol prohibited.
Is that something you'd like to see in our town?
I would like to see that statewide, but there is a bill that's being introduced statewide that hasn't been taken up. And I don't expect it will be taken up this year, but the Burlington, because the city of Burlington voted on it as a charter change, I think it's sort of forced their hand a little bit in terms of they at least have to consider it in Montpelier for the city.
And would that mean that then other towns could also do a charter change? Or is it
Well,
just
you
the
could
city?
do it that way, but what I would prefer is that if we can get them to approve that change in Burlington, that we approach our legislators and encourage them to make it statewide where firearms are prohibited in establishments that serve alcohol in Vermont. And then there's no question, when you hit the state line, it's illegal in Vermont, you can't do it. It's not a question of, well, can I do it in this town, but not in this town? And, you know, that is difficult, and it's hard to enforce, and it's hard to get past because it's seen as sort of punitive and whatever. So I heard you saying, Trevor, that we might be in session longer than was originally planned because of budgetary things. So I know that the original calendar said the session was going to end on May the 9th, which is like right around the corner.
It's not happening.
We're expecting, we've been told to plan to be in session until the end of May.
But that
Which could
extension
be-
is not limited to financial issues?
Correct.
Okay. See, the states I've lived in, it's in the Constitution. The length of the session is constitutionally stipulated. So they have to be done, unless the governor calls them back, they have to be done.
The only thing traditionally that we do is that the last piece of legislation that gets voted on is the budget.
Yeah.
So in a if I can use the
Typical.
word normal, typical is probably a better word. A typical year, there's a process, and we go through it, and committees and chairs and people know that the budget's getting close. I better get my act together or prioritize my work, right, in terms of what I want to get passed. Now, we are in the first year of a biennium, so bills are not going to die at the end of this session.
I'm
so.
not used to that either.
So, anyway, but I think what'll happen here is that we will in fact have a budget that's agreed upon, but it won't come to the floor.
And it might even come to the floor and we might still stay in session. There are a bunch of things being discussed.
I think you're right, they
they-
might, but I think they might hold it too.
Yeah.
But, and wait for the education bill. And that's the one it's gonna probably take us to the end of May.
So how will I, as a citizen, how do I know when the session is going to end?
As a legislator, how do I know when the session is going to end?
We have a sense of it.
We're in the
And
same-
someday they're gonna say, oh, they passed a thing that
Yeah,
it's
we're in-
gonna end on this day.
We're in the same boat.
That's
I suspect that if leadership across the Senate, House, see a way forward on the education bill that's gonna work for most people, then that'll drive it. And once they sort of have an idea what that's gonna look like, then everything else will fall into place. And the budget will still probably get voted last, but still. Yeah, it's just a different year this year.
So I'll keep watching for S-131, and if you're hearing about it, that's a good sign. So,
Yeah, one thing about charter changes and things like that, is, we have these crossover things like House bills have to move over to Senate, Senate bills have to move to the House, and that's already gone by. But with charter changes, there's no limitation on how long you can work on those. There's no crossover requirements.
well, the Senate sent it to the Rules Committee.
Yeah, I know.
And then, but, it got kicked right back, so, whatever. Of course, a charter change is one thing, and a gun bill is like a wholly different thing, so, But it's good. They passed it. It took a little extra gyrations. They did amend the bill, though. So have you heard, has there been discussion about that amendment in the House? Like,
Not
Right.
yet, yeah.
so the original town charter language included references to adjacent properties, and it was intended to cover, you know, the Red Square shooting was on the sidewalk in front of the establishment, or right by it. And so I think it was intended to sort of be a little more broad to cover that, and the Senate amended the bill to make it strictly the actual premises on which the alcohol is served, because Ledge Council was very firm in their belief that it would not stand a constitutional challenge without that change.
Sure.
So.
I have a question on procedure and follow-through. I was part of a group that presented a petition to ANR to regulate wake boats on inland lakes in Vermont. And the rule that was passed was not what we wanted, but it was better than none at all. Part of the rule that after it went through all its processes, LCAR, ICAR, all that stuff, and part of the rule states that there needs to be a home lake rule, which means that if you own a wake boat, you need to call a lake your home lake, and you need to stay in it. And if you don't stay in it, you have to get your boat decontaminated in order to go somewhere else or come back into your home lake. And the reason for that is because wake boats have lots of ballast tanks where they suck in water to become extremely heavy so they can plow through the water so people can surf on the wake on the back that's oversized, like 3 or 4 feet worth of wave without a tow rope. They just surf on the back. There's so many types of invasive species that get sucked into the ballast tanks, and because the ballast tanks can't be emptied all the way, they carry whatever they suck in to the next lake and could infect the next lake with whatever, you know, villagers of zebra mussels or you know, milfoil or what have you. So that was part of the rule that was passed. But DEC and ANR have told us that that rule is not going to be enforced. So I'm wondering what happens when DEC doesn't follow protocol, and who follows up on what they're not doing?
I'm very familiar with this issue
This is a
since I
Trevor
chair
question.
LCAR. Okay, and I was chair when this rule came before us. And there was a lot of debate, a lot of controversy around this. And I think case could be made that it could have been stronger in terms of the way the rule came out, but there was some compromise on the part of the advocates and other folks to move it in a certain direction. Then I'm curious to know who said at DEC, but they weren't going to enforce this. So if you can find that
It
information.
would be Jenny Austin. She's the newest Lakes and Ponds manager.
Okay, good to know. I speak to the commissioner on a regular basis, so, because it's also my portfolio in appropriations is ANR and the criminal justice system. So I'm very familiar with that. That's disturbing to hear that. It's the first time I've heard that they're not enforcing that. That was one of the compromises that got made. There was also, you said something about a petition. You involved in a petition process also?
Yes, there are.
Which lake?
I live on Shadow Lake in the summertime in Glover.
Okay.
And.
I know the folks up there quite well, yeah.
Great, come and visit. We are one of, I think, 10 lakes that have sent petitions in to ask to prohibit wake boats on our lakes for a various and sundry amount of reasons.
Just for a little information for other folks here, ANR, as part of the rulemaking process, they came up with certain size lakes and distances from shore and an area within a lake that they could actually do these activities. When it all got said and done, there are only so many lakes that fall in that category. Of course, Lake Champlain and Memphremagog were two of the bigger ones, but then there was a handful that, but the compromise was to give lakes or lake associations the opportunity to petition
Correct.
to have a waiver not to allow wake boats. So go ahead, sorry.
So, thank you for
Yeah.
that background. Shadow is one of 10 or 11, I forget how many there are, lakes that have petitioned to have wake boats prohibited in our lakes because of loon nesting and stirring up phosphorus from the bottom and safety of swimmers and other boaters. There's a lot of other reasons as well, dams and other things. And those petitions have been pushed off at this point because Jenny Austin is trying to revamp the use of public waters rules right now. So the petitioners are going to potentially have to wait another year and a half or however long this process has to go through again. It's going to have to go through all this legislative stuff, and then it goes to ICAR and LCAR again. It takes a long time for all of this stuff to happen. And the 10 or 11 lakes are just sitting ducks as far as invasive species goes. And we're just very concerned, extremely disappointed in the process that this has taken, and we're just feeling frustrated.
Thank you for that. And I will follow up, and maybe I can get your email also, so we can stay in touch.
Yeah.
We can call DC before the committee.
The
We can-
Environment
we can-
Committee.
We can, well, actually,
Or-
before LCAR.
Oh, LCAR too, yeah.
We can call
Oh.
them back to explain to us why they haven't followed through on the rule. So, but I need to do a little research of my own too. I want to make sure.
Tell them I sent you.
No,
You're on video.
I'm very sensitive to the concern around wake boats. I really am. I don't think they properly address the safety issues, and then you have
they stated
and then the
as
environmental issues, both of them. I had a very personal experience. I have a fishing boat. It's not a large one. It's about an 18-footer. And I was on Lake Champlain, and I was fishing, and I usually pay attention because there's big boats around, right? So you kind of watch for that. But unbeknownst to me, there was a wake boat 100 yards or so up behind me. And all of a sudden, my boat almost capsized. And a wake boat had been operating out there. And so I know what that's like. So anyway, we should talk after this, okay? All right. Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Thank you so much for being
Yeah,
here
please.
tonight.
Thank you very much.
Really varied discussion, and really appreciate everybody sharing with us, and we appreciate being able to share with you what's going on also. Tomorrow I think it is, this week, the Committee on, you don't know what I'm going to say,
No.
the veterans hearing that that Matt Byron's committee.
Oh, you're talking about, I don't know which one you're talking about.
There are hearings going on about veterans and how they're being treated in the
It's the
state.
Veterans Home, maybe.
And it's a lot of things. Give me one moment. I will pull it up. I apologize for not being more prepared. But here we go. Veterans Affairs public hearing is happening April 30th, so tomorrow at 4 o'clock. If there are any concerns about the Veterans Home, mental health, or access to services, You can attend the hearing in person or virtually. You can send in written testimony. And if you're interested in just listening, you can log on to the Vermont House webpage and you can find it. It will be live streamed also. So,
So it's
that
on the
is a
floor,
public
it's on the
hearing.
floor of the house?
No, it's in room 11.
So it's
So
the
it's-
Veterans Committee live stream?
It is, it's the Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs is doing the hearing. What the Senate and the House together are doing the hearing to understand what's happening. So if anybody has testimony to share, if anybody wants to listen to the testimony, it's being done tomorrow, and it will be on YouTube after also.
So is it limited to state matters relating to veterans?
It's mostly around the Vermont Veterans Home, veterans housing, and family support also. So it's testimony on all kinds of policy issues related to veterans, housing, mental health, Vermont, what's happening in Vermont, whether it is impacted by what Vermont is doing or federal. I'm trying to get a handle. Did I answer that? Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a friend she works with the mental health, she works in the VA. She's an administrator of a number of clinicians who work in the mental health area, and their staff they're not firing people, but they're putting them in a position where, if they're close to retirement.
Well, I can send you this, and if she wants to testify, she could still sign up if she signs up tonight. So you can share that with her.
Okay.
Because I think that's what they're trying to get a handle on. So,
All right,
All right.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.